Hi, this is Rick Brandenburg, the Peanut Extension Entomology Specialist at North Carolina State University. And I want to take just a few minutes and talk a little bit about results from a 2020 early season Thrips trial in Bertie County. And Dr. David Jordan and I, for it seems like half our careers, have put these trials out at the beginning of the season. And the reason we do is that we obviously see variation from one year to the next in the weather and ultimately then in the performance of these products. And we want to know which products perform the most effectively uh, as a whole year after year after year and not necessarily in one particular year. So we do these trials a lot, and we always caution growers and agents and others to look at data from one particular year with a little bit of hesitancy as far as making any sort of a wide-scale recommendation, because every year is a little bit different. And our recommendations for many, many years now have included an at-plant in-furrow treatment of either Thimet or Forate, Vellum Total, Admire Pro, or Ag Logic. And we have come to the conclusion that the addition of a foliar spray of orthene or acephate about 3 weeks or so after planting at a half-pound rate uh, typically pays off. We see, I would say, at least 7 years out of 10, we see a good return on that investment, in that we see added thrips protection and an increase in yield. So in the 2020 data, we have a test, as you can see here, and we have a total of 10 different treatments, including the untreated. Number 2 is the use of a 3-week post-plant orthene application foliar spray only. And then number 3 is Thimet in furrow. 4 is Thimet plus orthene spray at 3 weeks. Then 5 is Vellum Total. 6 is Vellum Total plus orthene. 7 is Admire Pro. 8 is Admire Pro plus the orthene foliar spray. And then 9 and 10 are Ag Logic, and then Ag Logic with the orthene spray. And if you look at number 1, you see that the yield in these plots was right at 4,000 pounds. And then when we go to number 2, where we didn't put anything in furrow, but we sprayed with a foliar application of orthene at 3 weeks, we added about 300 pounds to the yield. So one might assume then, well, if then you would see that same increase in yield in your Thimet and Ag Logic treatments or whatever if you added the treatment in. Well, what you see if you look at this, if you compare the Thimet alone with Thimet plus orthene and on down the list, you really don't see a yield enhancement in the addition of the orthene in these particular set of plots in this year. In fact, if you look at 9, the Ag Logic alone, and the Ag Logic plus orthene, you actually see what appears to be a 500-pound yield reduction. Now, the reason we're talking about this is that finding variability in yield in plots is something that is really common. And the reality is you just need to have one plot that's got some drainage issues or a little heavier soil or whatever, and it impacts the yield just in that one plot, that obviously has an impact across all the replicates and may somewhat, I guess you could say, artificially influence the yield results or reduce them. So this is why we do these trials year after year after year, because if you looked at just 2020, you'd say, well, there's no real value if I'm using an at-plant in-furrow insecticide with adding the orthene. And in 2020, that was certainly true. In 2019 and 2018, based on our data, that was not true. We still feel confident that the addition of this 3-week post-plant spray provides benefit and value and profitability. But every year is a little bit different, and I know in comparing our at-plant and furrow insecticides from 2019 to 2020, the results we saw were much different. And the reason for that is in 2019, we had it incredibly warm. It was almost a hot May. And as a result, the products performed a little differently than what they normally do. And their rankings were different. That doesn't mean that's what you use as your rankings for which product you pick from here on out. It just means every year is a little bit different, and we look to find the products that have the best average, the best performance over the long haul. And so while 2020 didn't show us an advantage of acephate, over the long haul, the use of that product does provide advantages, and we feel very comfortable with continuing to recommend the use of acephate or orthene at half a pound 3 weeks after planting. I hope that information helps, and once again in 2021 we'll be putting out more trials and try to continue to build our database for how these products work most effectively.